Jordan Rudess has been, without a doubt, achieved legendary status. Known primarily as the keyboardist for Progressive Metal Masters Dream Theater, Jordan has also been featured on 16 Dream Theater albums, as well as projects with Rod Mogenstein, Tony Levin, and Marco Minnemann. Jordan has also released 15 solo albums and developed countless music-based apps for mobile devices. He is about to hit the road for his From Bach to Rock musical journey, and I am super psyched to talk to Jordan Rudess on the show. So, Jordan, it's good to talk to you again.
Oh, it's great to talk to you. Glad we could coordinate this.
I am too. You know, it's so funny. Coordinating these things, I know, can be kind of a headache, especially when someone like you has so much on their plate and you've got so much to do. Like, you know, you must feel kind of pulled apart at times. Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's interesting. You know, the way that I deal with it is I'm very passionate about all the things that I do. So that's kind of like my driving energy is just really a love for the various things, you know, like whether it's making apps or playing solo concerts or with Dream Theater or, you know, this is just who I am and what I'm all about. So that's what gets it done, you know.
Well, so I have to say, first off, I was a little shocked that an East Coast boy was calling me from California, and even more shocked, and I have to say kind of disappointed that this tour that you're doing is basically West Coast. So first off, what happened to the East Coast, buddy?
Well, actually this particular solo piano concert outings, that was a little experiment that actually first happened in a few states on the East Coast. You know, it's a new thing, so we're kind of taking our time and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And what I did originally is I played in New York and in Massachusetts and in Pennsylvania. So, and it was you know, it was something that I enjoyed and it did work. So there'll be more to come. You know, it's just a question of it kind of rolling out more slowly. So yeah, we just have to stay patient, and you know, and I'm putting a lot of energy behind these shows, so in the future I can do more of them.
This is really an interesting concept, because I remember when we first talked a while ago, and then even when we talked when last time you guys were in Atlanta, you were telling me about how you were doing these little like kind of residence shows type things, like, you know, doing some shows in New York, like you said, and everything. Were those actually like structured performances? Like, do you go into those with a structure, or because I also know that as an artist, one of the things I love about your social media presence is that you tend to kind of sometimes bring out an almost mood-based improvisational thing, you know? So are the shows more like that, or are the shows more sculpted and more, you know, more defined?
Well, the Bach to Rock solo piano shows it's pretty defined.
Okay.
Yeah, I go in there with a plan, with a set list. You know, of course, there's improvisation mixed into it all, but you know, in general, it's kind of a Jordan Rudess journey, if you will. It starts from you know, even before I went to Juilliard, and kind of gets into my whole time at Juilliard, and you know, I play some things that relate to that period and tell some stories about what happened back then. You know, things like when my classical music teacher came and took my music away after playing a Chopin ballade for 1 week and said, "If you study with me, you have to memorize this," you know. So, yeah, like, and moving into my whole love for synthesizers, but all expressed from the piano, which is really cool. So I'll literally play some Bach, I'll play some Chopin, I'll do some, you know, cover songs from my favorite prog tunes, things that influenced me a whole lot, like, you know, a King Crimson song, maybe a Genesis tune, and of course, you know, moving into some LTE and a touch of Dream Theater and some original stuff too. So it's a progression. It's definitely you know, a plan, and within that plan, there's a lot of room for, you know, the spirit of improvisation, certainly.
That's really cool to hear, because one of the things I love that you kind of coined this as, was that it's a musical journey. So obviously, is it safe to say that the show is kind of conceptualized in the sense that it starts out at the beginning and kind of ends at the now, like where you're at now, and then covers all in between?
It really it is very much like that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just try to take people through my world. It's been a long, strange trip. So, but it's been really fun, and I've covered, and since I play so many different styles of music, I just love to share that. And doing it at the piano is like a home base for me. With the piano, with a nice grand piano, I can express so much. So it's a perfect way to kind of tell the story and to bring people into my various stylistic worlds and have some fun and do some good sharing.
Because as a musician myself, in my band I generally play electric guitar and some acoustic guitar also. But I also know that when that transition is made from playing an electric instrument to an acoustic instrument, it's almost kind of like you've shed some clothing a little bit. You do feel a little more naked. You know what I mean? So,
totally.
Is that something that when you initially started doing these things that you had to kind of adjust to, or was it an easy transition for you, being that the piano, being, like you said, like such a huge part of you?
Yeah. That's a great question, because the piano is definitely a home base. So in many ways, I feel as comfortable with that instrument as anywhere else on the planet or in any other musical situation.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, this show is it's somewhat about challenges. And I guess to give an example is that I want to express things using that instrument that really show the whole range of what I've done, what I've been through. So, like, I'll do a piece like I'll take Dream Theater's Dance of Eternity,
uh-huh.
and I'll and I'm that's one of the tunes that I'm playing on this solo piano tour, and that is definitely not a solo piano piece, but I spent time with it and kind of reconceptualized it to make it something that would really work in the piano. So in that case, yeah, it's kind of like being naked. It's putting myself out there to try something that is challenging, because it's a hard piece to play all the different parts, But it's really fun, and I think the end result for me, like putting it together, has been very satisfying. But it's certainly something that's not necessarily, I'm just going to, improvise this or whatever, and it'll just be flowing. It's something that is a little bit challenging for the audience, because it's asking them to hear maybe a song that they have heard in a different way, in a brand new way. And it's technically challenging for me as well. Even playing the parts in the band, and that's one of the pieces that does have its challenges about it. But certainly playing it all on the piano is another level of fun, shall we say?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that the Notes on a Dream album. Like, I remember the first time I heard that album, hearing songs like Another Day, in that kind of sparseness, that it really kind of, like you said, it's more exposing of the song in general, without having to hear all of the the goodies and the tricks and the little toys that you have that make everything Dream Theater that it usually is. But to just hear it really brought down into its core, it gives the listener the chance to hear these songs like in such a bare bone setting. Were there any particular songs that you attempted that you were like, yeah, there's no way in hell this is going to work?
There's definitely songs that are kind of like that I wouldn't necessarily even take on. I mean, anything could be, I could do an arrangement of anything, but certainly, like take a big epic song, Breaking All Illusions. That one might be like even harder to do than Dance of Eternity. So the more of a kind of like crazy progressive band arrangement something is, the harder it's going to be to bring down to just piano. But also, in some ways that can be very fun. It doesn't matter just a matter of time, really. But the other thing about the piano, and that I like to take advantage of, and that I do take advantage of on this, all these concerts, is that to me the piano music has a certain kind of a resonance or a voice, and I'm very sensitive to what sounds the best on the piano. So a lot of times when I'm playing arrangements, I'll take the approach of, kind of understanding, what musicality can be brought out of a piano. It's almost like when you look at different composers, and some of them write better for piano than others do. Like Chopin was an amazing composer for the piano, or Debussy, beautiful piano music, and others were maybe a little bit more awkward. So most everything that I play, I try to really do it with the understanding of the way the piano really sounds and what it means to be, making music on that instrument.
And one of the things that I always thought was really interesting to me, and I'm hoping you've heard this before, but in speaking to some of my friends who are very huge Dream Theater fans, one of the things that we've always discussed is the fact that it's kind of understated the amount of heaviness that you bring to Dream Theater. So obviously there's this Dr. Jekyll side of Jordan Rudess, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, where you've got the classical influence, but there's also, you've got some heavy inspiration and, influences in there. What are, like, where do you find that line, if that makes sense, to say, like, I want to cross that line and push it into that kind of progressive metal side, but at the same time, like, I want to find a way to still maintain my classical composure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, that's all of that is interesting to hear you say, and things that come up, and I think about it a bit. I mean, if I'm sitting at a piano, I mean, obviously, with my two hands, I can express so much, but like, just getting back to what you were saying about my relationship with kind of the heavier side of Dream Theater. A lot of people, they don't even realize, people really don't know what parts I write and what parts like John Petrucci writes, or a lot of people think that they might, but I think they would be surprised that some of the heavy riffs that are not even necessarily played on keyboards might be written by me.
Right.
Some of the really beautiful little piano melodies might be written by Petrucci. So in that sense, we're all composers that are just writing for the medium that we're trying to express ourselves in. And and the other part about being a keyboard player outside of the piano is that there has to be very little ego involved. And I say that because as a keyboardist, especially in the metal band, a lot of times it's about creating colors that either just make things work, or it's about doing things like creating an orchestral sound or a choir sound, or things that people wouldn't say, oh, that's a keyboard, even if it's like a tremendous sounding alternative kind of guitar patch. You don't even know it's the keyboard. So I kind of have to erase my ego from anything and just do the parts that I think are going to sound really, really cool. So I mean, I have an entire collection of super heavy sounds that I use in a lot of the Dream Theater tunes that you wouldn't really even know, because it just sounds like the guitar is maybe like bigger than life, or not to take anything away from Petrucci's tone, which is the best in the world, but still there's like things that I'll add to that general sound to give it different character, whether it's a sound like that's more familiar to Dream Theater fans, like a snarling pig sound, which I've talked about, that gives kind of a gnarly, character, but there's a lot of those kind of things. So my musical personality really morphs into a lot of different places, and especially these days, I'm very comfortable playing Bach. I'm comfortable playing Chopin, and I'm comfortable playing with really super heavy, sounds as well. So it's just, who I am and what I do.
See, and I love that attitude too, because about a year or so ago, I did a little personal musical experiment where I did an EP of just acoustic solo folk tunes, and what I did was I took heavy metal songs, some of my favorite metal songs, and just turned them into tried to play them as just folk songs. And my takeaway from that was something that I feel like we forget even as music lovers, is that no matter what you're listening to, it's all born of this same root. You know what I mean? Like there's this very tribal, very ancient kind of oldness to it before it gets added with the distortion and the drums and the keys and everything like that, so it's a really it's a really interesting thing to do. And so that's why I was super fascinated by this particular tour that you're going to do. Now, are you planning to do some recordings of it so that the audience can kind of hear that same thing, kind of hear those transitions and whatnot and experience it?
I haven't planned any recording of it yet, but I'm sure that I will record some of these shows. Haven't quite gotten there yet, but I definitely will. I like to, I'm into capturing things and also sharing on social media, and there'll definitely be at least elements of it that get captured and then shared.
You have such this you've kind of developed this, or enveloped, I should say, this very cosmic personality on stage where, in your performance, where people kind of refer to you as the wizard, how did you react to that? When that kind of started to kind of become a thing, did you kind of think that's kind of weird, or you were oh, I dig that, I just think that's kind of fun. I mean, the keyboard player thing has been kind of in that life for a while. I mean, one of my biggest influences, along with Keith Emmerson, was Rick Wakeman. He's doing the whole cape thing back in the day, and that relates to the whole kind of magical, mystical, wizardry thing. And so for people to look at, somebody like myself, who's maybe the next generation of keyboard players, and give that kind of tag to, it's just wow, that's really cool. And especially because, I like thinking about, and I like playing into the whole magic, wizardry side of art, whether it be with music or whether it be with images or video. That is kind of like my world, to play with, the way things are viewed or shaped or, perceived. So I love that, and love it to the point where I took that and I started my company, Wisdom Music with a Z, and have a lot of fun with that kind of tag. And and also I was lucky enough to befriend a wonderful musician and graphic visual designer, Mika Tiska, this Finnish guy who created the wizard, the JR Wizard character, and that people love that. I'm making some buttons of that character now, so that'll be really fun. So when I go to the shows, we can have those available. Oh, please put it on a shirt.
There you go. Right, totally. Yeah.
So, to kind of go into the Dream Theater thing, one of the things I wanted to ask you is because, especially after the last time we met, was after the Astonishing performance here in Atlanta. The Astonishing album really kind of was kind of received with a lot of mixed emotions, even from myself as a longtime fan. Kind of heard it and I was kind of I don't know, but when I saw it live, with the media, with the visuals, with the whole everything that played into the concept, it just kind of all of a sudden it just made a lot of sense to me. Was that a pretty general consensus from that you heard a good bit on the road with that particular tour?
Yeah, definitely. I hear that a ton. I mean, first of all, we spent more time putting that show together and the music together than most anything we've ever done. It was probably the grandest production, shall we say, that we pulled off. And it was brave for us to do that, because whenever a band, especially a band with a big catalog, goes out and just says, okay, we're just doing this album, that's a big statement, that's a big move, and it's risky. So, but, within that, there's a lot of people that kind of have said exactly what you just expressed. And the other side of it is that every day now I hear people saying, "Oh, when I first heard The Astonishing, I didn't get it, or I wasn't that into it, but now I listen to it, and oh my God, it's a masterpiece." So, and I love that because, and I still don't expect everybody to like it because, it gets kind of mellow and, goes in and out of things a lot. And it's music that was composed as like a rock opera, so it's not your standard song.
Right.
So, but given all that, there's so many people that, when they give it the time, they're coming back and saying, "Wow, this is really, really cool and it's amazing, and I didn't get it at first, but I love it." And I like that because some of my very favorite albums in the world, whether it be like, Close to the Edge by Yes or Freehand by Gentle Giant, I mean, I didn't like it the first time really. I just kind of listened and went, "Oh, that's it's interesting." And then it's interesting enough that you go back and listen to it again, and after about 4 or 5 listens, you go, "Wow, this is really cool." And you kind of like, you start getting the depths of it, and start understanding the intricacies, and it becomes a favorite. So, time will kind of tell, I guess, with The Astonishing, where it really falls in the history books. But even to this point, I'm pleased with the fact that a lot of people are realizing that there's a lot to it, and, there's something really to appreciate.
It really was, because it was one of those kinds of things that when I went to the show, I was like, I'm going to go to the show because I'm a fan, and obviously I want to see my boy Jordan, and hey. But when I was sitting in the back and I was taking that show in, like song after song, it was almost like I was finally, it was hitting me, and I was like, wow. I'm getting it in a way that I didn't get when I was trying to sit down and listen to it. But kind of like the same way that I didn't get Rush when I was 10, but then when I was like 17, I got it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all about being in a different place when you hear it.
Right. And it's, this music, this progressive genre that we enjoy, it's not meant to be necessarily like immediate, like, a pop song. That's music that's just made for like, the kind of like, the average kind of, person on the street or whatever to absorb quickly, where prog, as we know, and prog metal gets a little bit deeper, and you take risks, and you have challenges, and it's intricate, and, the fact that it takes people a little while to get something, that's just what it is,
I've had a friend who's been trying to get me into King Crimson since we met back in like 2006. It took me to see them on this last tour for me to just go, "Oh my fucking God, this is what, okay, now I get it." You know what I mean? And now I'm like, now I'm a Crimson freak. You know what I mean? But it took that long, and for me to see them in like that specific lineup and that specific night, to really get that. And I love that. Well, one of the other things I also wanted to touch base with you that I loved was that on this Images and Words tour, I'm good friends with a guy named Luis who runs the North American fan club, Dream Theater fan club, and he had meetups in Atlanta for the Astonishing show, and did one in Asheville. And you actually, I think you and James, or was it you and James that actually went up and got to took some time out?
That's right. I remember that. We walked up to see that.
Yeah,
totally.
like. How is that for you to go to something like that and to interact with the fans and to kind of see that, like, I could only imagine what it would be like to have a Don fan club, you know what I mean, where people actually even cared to meet me, you know what I mean? So, like, for you to go to something like that, like, was it a cool experience for you to kind of interact with the fans in that kind of setting?
Well, I find that the Dream Theater fans are some of the coolest people. I mean, I got to tell you, like, I've been hanging out here on the West Coast doing an artist in residency at Stanford University, and I walk around the campus, and like every day, like somebody will walk up to me, like, "Oh my God, like, are you Jordan Rudess? Like, I love Dream Theater, man. I'm so into your music." And I'm like, wow, and I mean, Stanford maybe is not the best example because Stanford is, the top college like in the whole world. But I find that the Dream Theater fans are just a great, intelligent bunch of people out there doing cool stuff. I mean, 90% of the time when I run into a fan, it's like, I'll take the time and I'll say, like, well, great that you love, what Dream Theater is and what I do, but what do you do? And a lot of times they're doing something really cool. Maybe if it's just like computer programming or some other thing in the arts, or, I'm just interested in what people do, and I appreciate to get the feedback. So, I'm very social in that way, especially, with like social media and stuff. I enjoy that interaction and the engagement, and I look for that. It's fun for me. And, and in person, if I can go walk into a room and there's people who are into the music, I'm fascinated. I'm open to understanding and enjoying, that whole interaction. I think it's great.
I love that what you just said about that you show an interest yourself, and like a natural interest in what your fans are doing themselves, because I can also imagine that as an artist, to hear what other people are doing, like being a musician myself, like I tell people all the time, like I never feel like I'm not inspired enough. You know what I mean? So like I always like to hear what people are doing. So for someone like you, that must be the same kind of concept, where like you can hear these things and you can think like, wow, like that's kind of cool. Like I might want to try something like that. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Totally.
Yeah. It's definitely, meeting people and being open, and even like, social media, because that's kind of where things are out these days. That is a big part of who I am as a person and what I value. Because I see music as a way to not only be kind of a healer or a way to meditate in my own, just for myself in my own world, but also music to me is a way to reach out and to bring other people in and to, try to be in tune with them. I know that sounds somewhat spiritual, but it is. And the reason I make music is because I want to, put the music out there, and I want to get something back, this feedback loop. And, it's a way to bring myself. It's a way for an artist to bring themselves closer to other people. And so, that's why I do it. It would be awkward to me if I put out music, and then at the same time I didn't want to meet anybody or didn't care to be engaged. It would almost be like, I wouldn't even begin to understand that,
So that's interesting, because that's kind of like I call it the Neil Peart syndrome, where it's like, you get the Neil Peart guy who's like, who puts out all this incredible music, and he's like wowed fans forever, and he has like zero interest in interacting. And as someone who has social anxiety or issues, like I totally understand that, but at the same time, I always looked at that and I'm going like, for as socially awkward as I am, if someone wants to talk music, you can put me in a corner for an hour and I'll talk to you happily. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you enjoy that. But that's the thing, like, the goal, I think, as a person is to be as open and as comfortable as possible, so for any of us, like I'm a little shy too, but at the same time, music helps me kind of break out of that, and it just allows me not only to perform and to express myself there, but even in a greater sense to open up and to be part of the world, and to and feel relaxed and comfortable and in tune. So not only am I sharing my music, which is an extension of me, but I'm also in a higher level just sharing who I am. So I really feel that.
It's funny. I was looking back at our history together, Jordan, and the first time I interviewed you and met you was in 2011 when you guys were at the Tabernacle. And that night, I was so ecstatic, and I was so honored, because you showed me a brand new app that you were just working on that was coming out in about 10 days. And it was the Geosynthesizer app. And like, obviously, 7 years or 7 years is a long time. Like, what is on the forefront for you right now as far as app development, and how have you grown since like doing things like the Geosynth and things like that?
Well, that's great that you bring that up, because Geosynthesizer was an important application for me, and it led to a lot of really cool things. And actually, my latest kind of family of apps is based around the playing surface idea of Geosynthesizer, and it's called GeoShred. GeoShred is really another beast, but if somebody looks at it, they'll say, oh, it looks a little like Geosynthesizer. It's a partnership that I have with some of the people that I met out of my relationship with Stanford University. And it's been really, really awesome to work with these guys. It's based on a technology called physical modeling, which is another way to produce sound, like the sampling and subtractive synthesis, or FM synthesis, which actually Stanford, other people who developed that. And then there's physical modeling. And so this new application, the sound engine, is based on physical modeling, and the playing surface is based on some ideas that I've been developing since the days of geosynthesizer with some wonderful partners. So this has been, another area that I've been so involved with, kind of like this exploration or kind of search for ways of expressing oneself on modern instruments. Like, how do we take technology and how do we use it to be more expressive? So that's why I started this company. I wanted to kind of do research and create instruments that would extend the ability for us as human beings to interact using technology to make really expressive, organic, great musical instruments. So Wisdom Music has functioned, in that way for me. So my latest, the family of apps is this one called GeoShred, and there's a GeoShred Pro, and that has all the features. It has MIDI, it has full editing capabilities, and then there's one called GeoShred Control. Control is just a MIDI controller. It's one of the most powerful MIDI controllers out there today. It has this kind of MIDI that's called MPE, and that allows you to have each finger kind of have its own expression individually. So those people who know about like MIDI, if you play a chord like on a standard keyboard synthesizer and you move the pitch wheel, like everything moves, like the whole chord moves. But with this kind of technology, you could play a chord, but you could move only one note. You'd have a 3-note chord and move only one note, or maybe change the filter of another note. So it gets pretty expressive and pretty deep. So, and then there's GeoShred Play, which is without all the editing capabilities, without any of the MIDI capabilities. All of these applications are available on the iOS App Store, so they'll run on the iPhone or they'll run on the iPad as well. And it's been really, really, a great journey doing that, especially these days when I'm, out here at Stanford and learning myself and sharing, and it's been really wonderful.
And then I can also only imagine that from, your cassette release of Arrival to like now, like for you to see, technology, kind of like make its way into music, but for you to embrace it as it came along. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's some people out there, especially musicians, that are kind of skeptical and almost like, not willing to embrace technology. Do you wish you could see more of that in other musicians?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, it's been my path. I left Juilliard when I was 19, and part of the reason I left was because it meant so much to me to move a pitch wheel on a synthesizer, or to turn a knob and hear the harmonics and the filter change. And I knew that was just a part of my brain, and it's, like playing the piano is wonderful and great, but when I play on an electronic instrument, it just kind of goes into another circuitry in my head, and that was really that is very valuable to me. And I also am a real believer that technology is a way to reach a higher level of expression in music. I mean, pianos, guitars, flutes, violins, wonderful instruments. The human voice is probably the highest level of them in many ways. But when you think about what technology can offer to the experience of making music, it's really, really exciting. And it's been my path to, to enjoy that, to be a player, but also play a role in developing that. And, and I think that, it's part of my gig or my job to kind of spread that, that magic around and let people, understand and enjoy what can happen, when we have these new kind of tools.
And with that being said, now you've gone, like I said, now you've got all these tools. Now you're stripping it right back down to boxer briefs on the piano or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, how excited are you to hit the road with this right now? It's
so awesome. I've been practicing so much, and I love one of the things that's the foundation of my musical world is my technique. I was lucky enough to study with, some amazing teachers and be kind of in this lineage of, some of the greatest piano teachers of the last 100 years. At the top of that pyramid is this woman whose name was Rosina Levin, who was my teacher's teacher. And she was Van Cliburn's teacher. And so, that skill of being able to use my fingers to play on a keyboard to express the ideas in my musical mind is, the main kind of thing that I've been working on that I do. So for me to go to the core and to focus on the piano and to, get totally into that and be working on my technique and working on Bach and Chopin and all these things, it feels so great. And the other side of it is that it's so wonderful to walk into a venue and not have to really worry about plugging anything in and just have a really beautiful grand piano. So that's kind of like the other side of my brain, or my passion is just to be, just to express myself on an acoustic instrument. And there's nothing like a beautiful, like Steinway grand piano. I mean, it's just a special, instrument, and I love creating in that particular zone.
And it also makes sound check a hell of a lot easier.
Oh my gosh, really a whole lot easier. So yeah, it's just a great thing for me. It just makes sense. I've definitely come to a great place as far as being at peace or at one with, everything I've done as far as like playing classical music and, and all that. And I just, it's all just a question of time, really. If I had more time in the world, I'd be playing even more classical music and doing more, but I'm already kind of busy. So,
So the last thing I wanted to talk to you about before we close out was a good friend of yours who passed away a few years ago was Richard Lanhart. And you had reached out to me and asked me to just give his material a listen and if I was interested, maybe write a piece about him. And there were two levels to that. The first level was that I thought it was such a cool thing that you yourself personally reached out to anybody that you had contact with to kind of let us know about Richard. He was completely off my radar. I'd never heard, and I never realized what a strong connection and influence he was on you. And so that was a really special thing to see. But are there any other artists that are like that in your life that you would like the people that are listening to this to maybe say like, hey, go give this a listen, and give this a try because this is important to me?
Well, I mean, somebody who was kind of related to the whole musical path with Richard is my friend Steve Horlick. You might have heard this album. My latest album is actually a collaboration with Steve because Steve it's called Intersonic.
Yes, I did.
And it's out now. Yeah. And he's a musician that I have such respect for. And he knew Richard. We all loved Richard. And my work with Steve is really an extension of what I started with Richard. It was such a special part of my life. If it wasn't for Richard, I wouldn't even be playing like the Continuum, or who knows, I might not even be playing the Seaboard. He was just first of all, he shared a driveway with me, and he was a real guru, technical guru, music guru. He was just somebody that could always advise me and, make sure that my technical desires were satisfied, whatever gear was out there, because he'd really keep an eye out on stuff for me and turn me on to cool stuff. So we kind of honor him, all the time for who he was and what he did. But I would say for anybody who wanted to, people should definitely go out, especially if you're into electronic music and cool sounds, check out what Richard Lanhart, left us on the planet. And if you want to hear what I kind of did as the further thought to what I learned from Richard, then, check out Intersonic and kind of see where all that is going as well.
Well, fantastic. Well, I know the fans are excited about this West Coast tour, and I'm excited for you, and I can only hope that it'll click and it'll take off and it'll make its way out here, because I would love to be able to see this kind of setting of you really taking these songs into this direction.
Awesome. And the other thing I just want to add before we close up is the fact that for the keyboard players out there, I'm going to be doing my third Key Fest. Key Fest is what I like to call the ultimate hangout for keyboard players. We're going to be doing it at Sweetwater.
Oh,
Music this year.
That's right. Where's that going to be again?
One of the coolest music stores. It's going to be at Sweetwater Sound, which is in Fort Wayne, Indiana, one of the world's largest and coolest music establishments, music stores. It's an incredible space with a theater and a whole catering hall and all these rooms and a great music store and just anything we want to put our hands on as keyboard players will be there. So definitely join me. Check it out. It's going to be on April 25th through 28th this year.
So April 25th
on my website.
to the 28th. Well, great. Well, awesome. Well, I'll be sure to make sure that there's a link to that as well and to your website. And
oh, nice.
And again, I know you're a busy guy, and so I'm going to let you go. But thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk to this old schlep again. And it's been great, Jordan.
Awesome, man. It's been awesome to talk to you. I appreciate it. And I will see you on the road.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.